Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And so glad to have you along with us as we kick off another 3-hour celebration of the history and tradition of the outdoor lifestyle right here in the great state of Michigan. Hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping and wildlife issues and conservation issues. And you know we wrap up each week's show with some wild game cooking as well. Our outdoor heritage is something to be celebrated. It's something to be passed on from generation to generation. And I think a lot of Michigan families feel that very intensely, and it's a very personal feeling for a lot of us. So I'm so glad that you're here to help us do this celebration, to celebrate this outdoor lifestyle. Can we celebrate Mother Nature, or do we just curse Mother Nature? It's been an interesting winter, hasn't it? Man, just when I thought it was over, boom. Well, I knew it wasn't over, right? It was only February, but real batch of cold weather, some snow. I shoveled again. I thought, I'm not going to shovel again the rest of the year. Well, I did shovel. But now, things are looking better. We got some warm weather coming. I'm going fishing open water. I'm real excited about it. So all is good. Yeah, I've been jonesing so bad to get out in the open water. Of course, my angler quest is under shrink wrap at Linwood Beach Marina. It's way too early to get that boat out. But I'm thinking, I really, really want to go fishing. I have a lot of friends with boats. I have a lot of people who have given me invitations. Avery, come and jump on with us anytime you want. But I actually booked a half-day trip with Captain Mark Pananzak of Real Fishing. Mark donated a Detroit River walleye fishing trip to our Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction. And I thought, it'd be nice just to book a trip with Mark. It's always nice to go out with somebody else and see how they fish. So I said, Mark, I want to go fishing, but can we do a combo trip? Can we do a skinny water trip and then trolling and then jump up into the river and jig for walleye? And he said, absolutely. So I am very, very excited about that. I'll be talking about it on next week's show, so we'll see how that went. It's going to be fun. I made a trip to Jay's Sporting Goods this past week to lay hands on my Brenton suppressor. I wasn't able to come home with that suppressor. Now, if you're saying, what's a suppressor? You might know it as a silencer. They really don't silence the sound that a gun makes, but they do knock the sound pressure level down significantly, the dBs down significantly. Now, I've already done damage to my hearing from shooting without having hearing protection on, and I'm paying the price for it these days with these little things that are in my ears to help me hear. But there's no reason I want to do more damage, and if I want to shoot that Brenton from inside of a blind, I'd like to help myself out here a little bit. So there is a Brenton, a 450 multi-cal suppressor at Jay's with my name on it. The 450 multi-cal means it can be used for everything from a 450 on down. So I asked Russ there at the counter at Jay's, I said, could I use that for my 223? And he said, yeah, you could. He said it won't be as effective because you'll get a lot of gas coming around the bullet because the bullet's smaller than the suppressor is designed for. So anyway, I went to Jay's. Russ there took me over to the kiosk, the silencer shop kiosk, and he walked me through the whole process. I had to get re-fingerprinted, even though I've already been fingerprinted because I have CPL. Re-fingerprinted, had to pay the the tax stamp fee. It was roughly $200 because, of course, in this country, we can't have a legal piece of gun equipment without paying the government for it and then registering it and then, letting them know we have it, right? So I did that. It'll be roughly 4, maybe 5 months now, if I'm lucky, to bring that thing home, to get it out of jail, as they say. And I'm really looking forward to that. I've seen suppressors on long guns before. My good friend Paul Phillips, the extreme long-range shooter, has suppressors on all of his guns. So I've seen them in person, and they're very impressive. So I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that. Also looking forward to the upcoming turkey season. It's not too early to start getting excited about that, in my opinion. I'm already finding myself, as I travel the back roads, looking for strutters in the field, looking for birds. They're not necessarily going to be, in April where they are right now, but at least I know there are birds in the area. I got an email from the DNR this past week. They said, well, thank you, Mr. Avery, for applying for the Deer Management Initiative, but you were not selected. I didn't think I would be, so I wasn't disappointed. The Deer Management Initiative is an advisory group being formed to help, in theory, shape the future direction of deer management in Michigan. There were 2,500 people who applied. Of those 2,500, there were roughly 20 chosen from the general public, the general population of deer hunters. There are 22 members of the Deer Management Initiative, the UP side of that group, and there are 24 from the lower. Now, I'm being told, let me pull up a text I just got here. Half of those individuals were invitees from specific groups we traditionally work with, like MUCC, NDA, which is what I don't know what that is, and the UPSA, among others. I haven't seen a list of those names yet. I know a couple of people who are on it. One is Jordan Hoover from the UP, who we had on the show here a couple of weeks ago. The other one is a biologist for Canada Creek Ranch. And the reason I know they're on there is they both publicly announced that they're part of that group. So I'm very curious to see what will happen with that and what direction will come out of it. What else? Oh, this is the last time we will talk here on the radio show before our big Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction. That's Saturday, March 2nd, and surprisingly, we still have just a very few number of tickets left. If you'd like to join us and get in on the fun, get in on the action, go to one.bidpal.net. That's O-N-E, one.bidpal.net/Trinity. Or, as you're looking at the Facebook page this weekend, as the show airs, I will have a QR code that you can just scan and take you right there. Saturday, March 2nd at the Great Hall in Midland, and boy, is it going to be fun. I think this is our 7th annual dinner that we've done. Live auction items, including a bunch of great hunts, predator hunts, turkey hunts, deer hunts, an African safari, some fishing trips, a Lake Michigan salmon fishing trip with Captain Paul Schlafly, Detroit River walleye trip with Captain Mark Pananzak, Saginaw Bay trips with Captain Doug Ward. I'm also going to give away a Saginaw Bay trip. Michigan brand products for a year. Those hunts, by the way, Matt Schock gave away the predator hunt. Gary Morgan of Wild Game Dynasty is the one who is donating the 3-day guided Michigan turkey hunt. We've got bow hunt in Illinois and an African safari, believe it or not. So a lot of good things to get involved in on that. Wednesday Night Live. I do a Wednesday Night Live every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Last week, we had Amy Trotter of MUCC on the show to talk about a lot of interesting things going on across the state right now. This week, as you are listening, coming up Wednesday night, Deidre Hurley, who is the director of our Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner, will be on with me as we officially kick off the online auction part of our big event. Really looking forward to that. I hope you can join us. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, after the break, Tom Jenkins will talk about the celebration of Fred Bear's birthday in Grayling next weekend, Fred Bear Day. Then Gina Canel of Jay's Sporting Goods with more on what you need to do to get a suppressor. Then Nick Buggia of the Michigan Wildlife Council checks in on their Here for Generations campaign. In our second hour, the guy in charge of aviation for the Michigan DNR, he's the guy that, all these aerial surveys and stuff they do. I want to talk with him about that, about their aerial surveys for eagle. Also, about an orphaned bear program they have that is absolutely fascinating. Randy Claramunt, Fisheries Director of the DNR, then joins me to answer the question, should you keep big spawn-filled female walleye from big water fisheries this time of year, or are you hurting that resource? In our third hour, Richard P. Smith says he can solve Michigan's deer hunting problem with 3 simple steps, and he wants to follow up on that Michigan Deer Management Initiative. And, of course, we wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner. My name is Mike Avery. This show is called Outdoor Magazine. My website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I would love to hear from you. Send me an email. Let me know what you think. And I hope you can stick around after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sandusky on WMIC, that's 660 AM, 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM, 580 AM, and north of the bridge in the Sioux on News Talk 1400, WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your mid-Michigan tracker headquarters. For more info, check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. Just a reminder, next Saturday, March 2nd, there is a fishing event. I really don't know what to call it because it's not I guess it's a series of seminars, but to talk about Saginaw Bay fishing, to talk about rigging your boat, to talk about using your electronics. Several very good Saginaw Bay captains will be on hand there for that event. That's Saturday, March 2nd. By the way, the website for Linwood Beach Marina is linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. Also coming up next weekend, a celebration of a man that changed archery. His name is Fred Bear. I feel so fortunate that I got to meet Fred Bear and spend some time with him many years ago, just before he passed. But the impact, the influence he had on archery cannot be overstated. So it only seems appropriate to celebrate his birthday. And Tom Jenkins is with us to talk more about that. Tom, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Mike, and how are you?
I'm doing great. Okay, so why should we celebrate this? Why should we recognize this man, even after all these years?
Well, the man was such an influence on everything, including the industry, the people. He was Crawford County's largest employee for probably 25 or 30 years, but all the amazing things that he accomplished in his life and spread so much good and goodwill. I mean, we just think it's fitting that we celebrate, and honor him as much as we possibly can. Back in 1999, the mayor of Grayling, Ralph Stevens, declared by an official proclamation Fred Bear Day on March 5th, which is his birthday. And so for years there was nothing really done about it. And once I got on the internet in the early 2000s, and and then seen the ad in the paper from the Avalanche about Fred Bear Day, with nothing going on, so I eventually made a post about it's Fred Bear Day in Grayling on March 5th. Nothing's going on, so would anybody like to get together and let's try to celebrate this? And that's basically how it started. And so in 18, we had our first event. So we're on our 7th event now, and the event is growing every year.
Yeah, the impact he had on archery was huge. But the impact, as you say, that he had right there in the Grayling area. I mean, there are still a lot of people wandering around Grayling who remember Fred and knew him and can tell stories about him.
Exactly, and it's amazing how many people we run into doing our various events. But, not even only at the events. I mean, we hear these stories in about every place in Grayling you could think of. There's still so many people that have a connection to him somehow. They work there, their grandmother, their aunt, their mother and dad, or brother, and all this stuff. And we hear these amazing stories that you will never read about all the good that he did. And there's people that love him really around the world. But I feel fortunate to be in the Grayling area because, this connection, I mean, it just, it gets to you at times about, you hear these stories that just, that like, you nearly want to shed a tear.
So if I come to, if I come to Grayling now, is there anything there? Is there any monument? Is there any kind of a plaque, anything to recognize this guy? The greatest guy in archery, the history of archery, in my opinion?
Well, not really. What it is right now is we are working on a bronze statue to be erected at Grayling, and we started the fundraiser a year and a half ago, and we have come up with $100,000 to get this project done. And it's thanks to people around this country that have made donations that's made this possible. Very big donation from Bear Archery, and along with J.C. Milligan, Ted Nugent, and thousands of others really that chipped in. So the statue's going to be 7 feet 6 inches tall. The base is already in place. The sculptor Ben Watts out of Columbia, Mississippi, has completed his work, and just this past Sunday, he drove his work out to Texas to turn that into a bronze statue, and that will be erected and unveiled on September the 7th this coming year.
It seems appropriate that statue should be larger than life because Fred Bear was larger than life.
Oh, he definitely was. I mean, in fact, not only here, but we're contacted by people in France. And once they seen what we were doing to honor Fred Bear, and they wanted to know, is it all right if we have a Fred Bear Day in France? And we said, go for it, man. And so there is literally a Fred Bear Day in France, and they have the same kind of gathering we do and do this 21 whistling arrow salute. So he is not just loved here, he's loved around the world.
Is there still, the old original Bear Archery plant, is that still standing?
Well, there's buildings in the back of it. Yes, so there's quite a bit of it standing, but all the front part is tore down. However, the foundation is there. So at our event, as part of the tribute we do to Fred Bear, on Sunday morning, now I know that's March the 3rd this year, but up until now we've always had it on March the 5th, but we decided to move it to the closest weekend. So on March the 3rd, we'll gather there by 10:15 in the morning, and we'll pick shooters. Last year we had 105 people that are trying to be one of them 21 shooters. That's how much support and love there is there. And so anyway, once we get that, the shooters selected, they'll line up. Dave Roos will officiate that and make the call, and then we release them 21 whistling arrows all together. It's pretty impressive. I think Fred Bear would be humbled to see what we're doing here.
Okay, I got a stupid question for you. How do you make your arrow whistle? Is it in the feathers or what?
No, what it is I take a ping pong ball and I drill holes in it, and so it's a total of each ping pong ball I end up drilling 48 times, and so in total, because I make extra whistlers, I'm doing that because what happens is that they're so fragile, I'll end up cracking a few with my drill, because you put them in a vise, and if you won't put too much tension, you crack it. If I get the drill a little crooked, I'll crack it. So there's many ways to screw them, making them whistlers up. but I'll tell you what, when they all release them arrows together, I mean, it's like, oh my God, it's pretty impressive. And I'll just tell you this, Mike, and at night 2018 when we had our first event, so I was a shooter there, and I was so mesmerized that I couldn't even follow the flight of my arrow, because you are standing right on that bare foundation and shooting like towards his driveway. So it's just, everybody just loves a man beyond belief.
Well, I talk about our outdoor heritage here in this state all the time, and the companies that have been formed here and the people who made their living here. I mean, Fred Bear, you go back and look at the old films, the old black and white films of his hunts and the way he promoted archery. And he was just such an interesting man and a very humble man. I mean, like I said, when I had the chance to talk with him, I was a 30-year-old kid, roughly a stupid 30-year-old naive kid. I knew I was in the presence of greatness, but he was so gracious and so friendly and so humble in the way he answered my questions. Just a very, very impressive man.
Yes, he was. I mean, he was the kind of person, and the Bear employees have told me this. In that plant at the time, they had 300 to 350 people working there. He knew the names of every person that worked there. And we're running into these people, all the time, and that still have this connection. And so it's great that we're having this event at this period of time, where there's so many of these people that are still there to share these memories, and these stories, and it just, as this event is growing and growing, I mean, more of these people are showing up and telling us, more and more about him that we never knew, and it's like, yeah, we knew that he's a great man. I mean, a legend in, the world's foremost bow hunter, and made the finest archery equipment and on all that stuff, but just being a human being, I mean, the stuff that he did, it's wow, it just amazes you.
I wonder, how old would he have been this year? Do you know that offhand?
Well, he was born in 1902, so I guess, what does that make him, 120, 22?
And the legend continues. Listen,
it will, and it's going to continue for many years, is the way I see it, Mike.
The website is fredbearday.org, fredbearday.org. If somebody wants to get involved, Tom, how do they do it?
Well, actually, we have two sites. One is the one you just mentioned, fredbearday.org. Mm-hmm. The other one, we have a Facebook page. It's just called Fred Bear Day.
Okay.
You just type that in. There's no charge for joining. You just punch that in, and it is the Facebook page is a private group. So you just request to join. We confirm you. You can see everything that we're doing. And the .org, you just punch that in, and that is open to everybody, and you can check everything out there, although there's probably more posts going on at the Fred Bear Day Facebook page.
All right, Tom, listen, I appreciate what you're doing. I will look forward to seeing that statue when it's unveiled. Have fun next weekend, and I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, for having us on. We really appreciate it, and looking forward to meeting you one day.
I will look forward to the same. Tom Jenkins, celebrating Fred Bear Day, fredbearday.org. That's next Sunday in Grayling. We'll take a break here. When we come back, Jeania Canel of Jay's Sporting Goods talks about, how you can get a suppressor for your gun. We're going from traditional archery to suppressors on guns. That's kind of a leap, but that's what we do right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Ludington on News 97.98, 98.7 WLDN. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Manistee on WTIQ 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knives. That's the sound of my Rapid River knife that I just pulled out of my pocket, opening up. I think a knife is one of the most valuable tools that anybody can carry. I carry this Rapid River knife with me all the time. I encourage you to stop by their showroom on US 2 just east of Rapid River and check it out. If you can't make it there, go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.us. That's rapidriverknifeworks.us. As an alternative, if you don't want to go to the website or you can't make it up to the Yoop, you can go to Jay's Sporting Goods. They have a pretty good selection of Rapid River knives as well. Speaking of Jay's, as I told you in the earlier segment, I was up there last week. I was up there to do the paperwork on my suppressor, getting a suppressor for my Brenton 350 Legend. Gina Canel of Jay's called me and said, hey, we've got one here for you. And I said, hey, can I come up and pick it up? And she just laughed at me. She said, no, there are a few things you have to do first. Gina is the manager of the gun department at Jay's Clare store, and she's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Gina, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
Always good, always good. Listen, I was pleasantly surprised and pleased. Now, listen, nobody wants to go, jump through hoops and fill out paperwork and get fingerprints and all that stuff. So aside from that, though, I thought the process was going to take longer than it did. It was actually pretty quick.
Yes, it is relatively quick. Like you said, there's some steps that you have to go through, but we have the kiosk here. The fingerprinting is done here. We can take your picture here, download it, get your Form 4 rolling. So it's a process, but we try to make it as easy as possible.
What is the wait time these days, Gina?
Typically, I'm going to say what I've seen is anywhere realistically between 9 to 11 months. I have seen some come back much quicker than that, and I could not tell you why that happens, but typically the 7 to 9 months is what we've been seeing.
So can I come to Jay's and look at suppressors? Is there a selection there to choose from? How does this work?
Yeah, so realistically, what we like to see happen, and a lot of times what we'll tell customers that are coming in to ask questions, to look at our inventory, really if you do your homework before you get here, it helps the process. Not that we're not qualified or willing to, but some things you want to look at is, what gun or guns do you have that are suppressor ready? Do you want to use a can that you can use on multiple firearms? What type of ammo are you going to be using? How long of a can, are you going to get and put on a gun, and then that adds length onto the existing barrel. So kind of do your homework. And what we see is when we either help or people come in with ideas, they'll buy more than one because they don't want to switch them on and off. They want to know that that's set up for that gun, it's ready to go. So again, if the customer can do their homework, see what they got that's already threaded, see which avenue they want to take, that helps. But like I said, we're here to help as well, and we'll walk you through those processes as well.
Now, my Brenton 350 Legend came threaded, ready for a suppressor. Are you seeing more guns these days from the factory set up and ready to go?
Yes. Yep, absolutely. So like I said, 22s come in threaded all the way up. So if they don't, then there's qualified gunsmiths that will thread them for you. So say if you've got that, one in the safe that you just know that's your go-to and you want to use that, it's just something you've always been drawn to, then that's something that can be sent out to a qualified gunsmith and get threaded.
You said you're seeing 22s that are ready to be suppressed. I would have thought, why do you need to suppress a 22? Until I saw a 22, I think it was a Ruger 1022, that was suppressed, and I went, oh, now I get it. That thing is whisper quiet.
Yeah, absolutely. So many reasons why people want them, and it just varies throughout. So I think you and I talked about this. I haven't jumped on the bandwagon yet. I'm
You will.
considering
You
it.
will. You and I both know you will.
Yeah.
Hey,
so,
real quick before I let you go, price
Sure.
range on suppressors. What's it going to cost somebody these days?
Oh boy, you can be anywhere from $300, $400, $500 up past $1,000. So just depends on the material it's made of, the type of baffling in it. I mean, there's quite a bit of involvement for such of a small accessory. But yeah, that's what you can look at. And we also, if we don't have it here, you're more than welcome to get it from another dealer and have it sent in here, and we'll run you through the process right here. Not a lot of people use that option, but we do see it happen. So there is a fee for that. We do charge $150 if you don't buy the can from us, and we're just doing the process paperwork for you. But if you see something out there that we just don't carry, there's that option as well.
And then the tax stamp that goes to the feds is an additional price too, right?
Yeah, I think $125 or something like that. Yep, you can purchase that right online through Silencer Shop.
All right, Jeania. Listen, I appreciate Russ was a lot of help behind the counter there, so tell him that
Yes.
I thanked him publicly, and I thank you for helping out, and Jeania, we'll talk again soon.
All right, sounds good, Mike. Thank you.
Jeania Canel of Jay's Sporting Goods. She's the manager of the gun department at Jay's Clare store with more information on suppressor. Hey, they're not for everybody, but they are interesting, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to shoot that gun with a little bit more quiet. We'll take a break. When we come back, Nick Buggia of the Michigan Wildlife Council right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. You can hear us in, let's go to Muskegon, WKBZ 1090 AM, and north of the bridge to Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Premier Maritime Training. If you've ever wanted to get your captain's license, I think this is your best bet. Captain John Littlefield taught my captain's class, and he can help you become a licensed charter captain as well. Check out the website, pmtcaptains.com, for more info. John has classes across the state, and I'm sure you can find one that'll fit your schedule. Again, that's pmtcaptains.com, pmtcaptains.com, and tell him that Captain Avery sent you that direction. I want to turn our attention now to a group that I have been working with for a few years now, and I really support what these folks are doing. In fact, when I heard about the Michigan Wildlife Council and their Here for Generations campaign, I went to them and said, I want to be a part of this. I want to help you promote this. I want to help to get the word out, because I strongly believe in this role and goal of educating the non-hunting public and fishing public and trapping public what it is that we do, and putting ourselves in the positive light of the good stewards of the resource that we are. Nick Buggia is the chairman, I think, of the Michigan Wildlife Council. He joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Nick, are you still the head guy there?
I am. Thanks, Mike, for having me on.
Always a pleasure. You just can't get out of that role, can you?
No. A few more years, anyways.
Tell me about the council. Did I sum up what you guys are all about? Was that an accurate description, Nick?
Yeah. No, it's very accurate. We're funded by sportsmen and women, and we're here to educate the general public on all the benefits of hunting and fishing.
Why is that important?
So the majority of our state's conservation funding, and really most states' conservation funding, is through the sale of hunting and fishing licenses, and not through state tax dollars or other means. And so in order to have abundant and sustainable wildlife, whether that's deer or lizards or whatever it might be that you enjoy. Those are all funded game and non-game species through the sale of hunting and fishing licenses. And so in order to maintain that, we need to sell hunting and fishing licenses to keep the funds flowing in.
So the campaign isn't necessarily directed right at hunters and anglers and shooters and trappers, but I think it's important that our group knows what you folks are doing.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we're it's kind of auspicious timing because we have a meeting today where we're going to kind of see all the results from last year's campaign and kind of see what direction we want to go in. We're talking about really maybe developing a better line of communication with sportsmen and women this coming year so they really know where their money's going and what we're doing. We're meeting with legislators today. Last couple of years, there's been some legislation that would have kind of changed the makeup of the council and sort of the intent of the council. So we're meeting with legislators today to kind of remind them who we are and why it's important, we're doing what we're doing and not to mess with that.
Don't water it down, right?
Yep, exactly.
Well, Nick, I didn't know you guys were having a meeting this week. I should have waited till next week to give you a call.
I thought about that this morning. I was like, I should have told them, but
No.
we always enjoy being on, and I'll be available again.
No, I appreciate that, and I enjoy having you on. And actually, the concept of being more directly involved with our hunters and anglers as well, I from my little small perspective, I think that's a great idea. And any way I can help you out in that, please let me know.
Well, no, we appreciate it. We'll probably take you up on it.
So listen, let me switch hats. Michigan Wildlife Council, but I know you're a part of other groups as well. Tell me what else you got going on, Nick.
Yeah, so I lots of different groups. I volunteer for quite a few. Most recently, I was with the Rough Grouse and American Woodcock Society. Still heavily involved by them, but not employed by them. I am now employed by the National Rifle Association.
Oh, you are?
So yeah. So I am the head lobbyist for Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Missouri. And they have they have their own hunting division as well, and so still have my fingers in the conservation world that way.
Well, had I known about this, we could have taken this conversation in a different direction because, man, there's a lot going on in Michigan along that line right now, isn't there?
Yeah, no, there certainly is. A lot of it was before my time. We're having a legislative update meeting in Lansing today to kind of let folks know everything that went into effect last week and what's kind of coming down the pipeline, what we can be expecting, this year as far as regulations involving firearms.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you're going to have your hands full there, Nick. So good luck to you on that. I appreciate all the good work you've done, and I'll look forward to our next conversation.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick Buggia of the Michigan Wildlife Council. The website here for MIOutdoors.org, here for MIOutdoors.org. The campaign is called Here for Generations, and I think it's a very worthwhile cause. We will take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, imagine flying over Michigan's North Country, not even the North Country anymore, just the entire state, and looking for eagle's nests or looking for orphaned bear cubs or whatever. Kevin Jacobs of the DNR from the aviation department there will talk more about that. Then Randy Claramunt on should we keep big spawn-filled female walleye this time of year?
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. Yes, this is a radio show. It is recorded, produced, distributed, syndicated, uploaded, downloaded as a radio show. And I think the best way to listen, if you can, is on your local AM or FM affiliate, your local radio station. I mean, after all, you're tuned in anyway, right? Why not stick around for the radio show on the weekend? But if you can't hear all 3 hours of the show, or if you live in some small part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal of the radio show, isn't it nice to know that there's a podcast version of the radio show available to listen to? Podcasting it's ubiquitous, right? Everybody has a podcast. Everybody does a podcast. I think it's, and again, this might be a little inside baseball, but I think I finally accepted that we are in a transitional period here with communications, in that broadcasting and online communications, there is no differentiation anymore. There is no line there anymore. It's reaching out to people. So however that happens, it's good, right? By the way, you can hear the podcast version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It's on my Facebook page. It's on Amazon Music, Audible, you know the whole list, Player, FM, Deezer, Odyssey. It's even on YouTube. I do podcasts as well for some of my broadcast or my advertising partners, including Offshore Tackle and Primal Outdoors. So keep an ear out for those as well. You can find those podcasts on those companies' websites. So what is going on? Oh, here's what's going on. I was having a conversation with my brother-in-law the other day, and my brother-in-law is and I won't mention his name or anything, but he's very, very much involved in aviation. And he said, Mike, I got a buddy who I think would make an interesting guest for your show. He's in charge of aviation for the DNR, but he's involved in a lot of very cool projects. And so I reached out to Kevin Jacobs, and we talked a little bit. And indeed, he is involved in a lot of very cool projects, and he has graciously agreed to spend a few minutes with us here this week on the radio show. Kevin, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well, Mike, and I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, listen, it's a real pleasure. When I learned more about the types of things that you're involved in, I'm actually fascinated by this. But why don't you tell our listeners basically what it is that you're doing, and then we'll go into detail on some of the projects.
Sure. First of all, I've been with the Department of Natural Resources for 24 years as a pilot. I've been flying for over 30 years, and it was always a love of mine to get involved with aviation, and then to be able to combine that with another love of mine, which is the outdoors. Well, that made really the perfect career path for me.
Isn't it great to be able to do something that you enjoy?
It's wonderful, and I think we're blessed to have the resources we do in this state. When you look at the variety that we have in this state, when you look at east of the Mississippi, it's just amazing. And a lot of the surveys we do from the air encompass, surveying and observing these different animals.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. How does the DNR use aviation? Why do you fly? But you say it's at least in part for surveys.
It is, and our history in aviation goes back quite a ways. The archival photos that we have date back to 1935, where we have an aircraft, which by today's standards obviously is an antique, sitting next to a fire control van. So there must have been some sort of a radio communication there. But it didn't really take root as a resource until probably the 1960s, when it really took off. And we had upwards of 19 pilots, over 20 aircraft. A lot of those aircraft were acquired through surplus for next to nothing. A lot of the World War II and these types of equipment became available. And that's where they really took the place of the fire towers. So at one point, Michigan staffed 150, plus or minus a few, fire towers across the state. So when aviation became a tool, then that really increased our efficiency. And while there was, 19 pilots back then, today we only have 5 full-time pilots, but make excellent use of that resource.
So in today's world, is it all wildlife related, or are you still working with forestry and even law enforcement?
Yes, all of those are aspects of our flying. We are housed within the Forest Resources Division, specifically within fire management. So one of our priorities is forest fire detection, and then we work as lookouts for ground crews. We also coordinate with suppression aircraft if they come in to work on a fire. And then there's forest health surveys that we do, and certainly if law enforcement needs us, we can be available for them as well. So we're in Forest Resources Division, but we are a statewide resource available to all the divisions.
So let's talk about some of these wildlife surveys. Years ago, I had the opportunity to fly over the Pigeon River Forest when you guys were doing your wintertime elk survey. We just rented a little bubble chopper. But it was fascinating and very cool because the perspective you can get from the air, especially that time of year if there's snow on the ground, pretty effective tool, it would seem.
Very effective. And the beauty of it is it's a repeatable survey. So we have what they call transects. Those are lines that we fly, and we have plots out in that elk country, in the Pigeon River country, and beyond that. And those plots are about 2.5 miles wide, 6 miles long, and then we have 8 transects within that plot. So we're flying a line, then stepping over 1/4 mile, flying that line, stepping over, and we repeat that. And when it's all said and done, we're covering over 4,000 miles worth of transects, but never leaving just a few county areas. So it gives us excellent coverage for the observers to count the animals.
So is it more effective in general to survey from the air, or are you better to put people right on the ground at eye level and do it that way?
Yeah, I think that was used in the past, and I think the key there is to be repeatable. And of course, you have private land issues, and that may prohibit access to certain areas. So from the aircraft, we fly that survey specifically at about 500 feet above the ground, so it's fairly low at 90 knots, so it's about 100 miles per hour. And again, if you can repeat that survey year after year, it gives you a good sense of what the numbers are doing. And that we usually do every other year. And the alternate years, we're doing the same thing in the moose range in the Upper Peninsula.
So, I bet a moose. Well, I almost made a statement. I'm going to ask you a question. A moose being a big black animal against a white background, do they stand right out?
Well, you bring up a good point, because we do those surveys in January, and you really do need a base of snow there to give you that contrast. And the moose are a little more challenging, in my opinion, in my experience, because they don't tend to be in the herds that you will find the elk. You might find a lone animal or a small group, maybe a cow-calf combination. And they are very dark, and it's amazing how many root bulbs and other dark items there are in the woods that can make it a bit challenging. But that's something that the observers really tune their eyes for, and with experience, they get very good at it.
So obviously the goal is to make these as accurate as possible. Are you concerned about getting exact numbers, or if you do these on a regular basis, are you more concerned just with what the trend is?
That's a good point, and there are trend implications there. It's beyond my scope of explaining how the model works, but there are a lot of smart people that put these models together. So they have to record, the observers that we fly have to record the conditions of the day. They record the animals that they see, and then those numbers go into a model. And that model takes a lot of different characteristics into consideration, and then it would then give you an output of an estimate for a population.
Are there any aerial wolf surveys in the Yup, or are those all from the ground level?
There are, as far as I know, in the UP, a couple of collared animals remaining, but by and large, the wolf information comes from the ground, and there are ways of going on the DNR website. If you have a sighting of a wolf, that's something that the DNR would want to know, so you can fill out a form to give that kind of information.
Kevin, we got to take a break here in a minute on the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, I want to talk to you about eagles, because I got a feeling, that eagle survey is now or very soon, isn't it?
It is. That's
Okay.
coming up in mid-March.
Okay, so we'll talk more about that. And then I've got to get you to tell me the story about orphan bear cubs and Vaseline. Can you do that for us when we come back?
Be happy to do that.
I appreciate that. Kevin Jacobs of the DNR, michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. Of all the different divisions and the pieces of the DNR, I've never really thought about this airplane aspect of it. You know, you think about biologists, you think about game wardens, you think about forestry people and firefighters, and you think about all the people in Lansing. I never thought about the people up in the air. Anyway, we'll finish our conversation with Kevin after the break, and then coming up in the second part of this hour, I want to check in with Fisheries Chief Randy Claramunt, and in the Ask Avery segment, I want to see if he'll answer the question about keeping big spawn-filled female walleye this time of year. Some people say it hurts the resource, others say it's no big deal. Well, we'll get the definitive answer coming up in Hour 2 of Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Carroll on two stations, WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Port Huron, WPHM 1380 AM, and north of the bridge, just go to Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Matt Smith Outdoors Realtor. Matt is a longtime friend of mine, good guy. He's an expert at finding recreational properties and vacation homes, and he can help your family turn a dream into a reality. I mean, think about this. For so many families, for so many years, you have this idea, okay, we'd like to have a place up north. Like to have a place on the water, some place where everybody can get together on the weekends or, summer vacations or winter getaways or whatever. And you never quite pull the trigger on it. I know in my own family, my dad, when he was still around for a long time, was looking for just that place where we could all get together. We never did quite find it. Well, if you find yourself in that situation, Matt can help you out. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. He's Matt Smith Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram. And by the way, if you're looking for a new home as your primary residence, Matt can help you out there as well. That's Matt Smith Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram. Right now we're talking with Kevin Jacobs. Kevin is with the DNR, but he's a pilot with the DNR. Kevin, what are you guys flying? Are they all fixed-wing aircraft?
They are. They're Cessna 182 aircraft, and they're excellent platforms for what we need, which is to fly low and slow. They're easy to maintain and a very efficient aircraft.
Do you guys ever get involved in search and rescue? Is that part of your job as well?
Yes, we can certainly assist conservation officers from the air if that's needed.
All right, so let's talk about the Eagle survey. I look at eagles. I'm old enough, Kevin, that every time I see an eagle, I still get a rush. I'm still thrilled by it. I show my grandkids eagles, and they go, "Oh, Grandpa, that's no big deal. They're all over the place." Isn't that crazy how our eagle population in Michigan has exploded?
Well, Mike, I'm with you there. It's one of my favorite surveys. It's one that we've been involved with extensively. Aerial surveys started in the state of Michigan for the bald eagle in the early 1960s. And talking to some of the academic partners involved with this survey, they've indicated this may be one of the longest, if not the longest, contiguous survey of its kind in the whole country.
So what were the numbers like back in those early days?
They weren't good. And I can tell you, one of the observers that I flew with for many years, he actually started with the department in the early 1970s. And he only flew in the Lower Peninsula, so I can't speak to the Upper Peninsula during that time. But when he started in the Lower Peninsula, there were 30 known nests in the whole Lower Peninsula. And he flew with us all the way up until about 2019. And by the time he was retiring from observing, we had something like close to 800 nests just in the lower peninsula.
Wow. So why, I mean, listen, I drive along almost any road along a river these days. This time of year when the leaves are down, I can spot eagles' nests all over the place. Why search them out from the air?
Well, initially it was to determine what the dispersion of the eagle population was. And what was really surprising is you could go to the tip of the Keweenaw Peninsula, find a nest there, and that made sense because it was somewhat remote. Northern Lower Peninsula the same way. But as the population expanded, we just kept finding them pushing further and deeper into even urban environments. Our survey takes us literally down the Detroit River, and there's nests within just a few miles, for instance, of the Detroit Metro Airport. These are areas you wouldn't expect to have eagles, but here they are, and they're thriving. Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up. Early on, I was always told by DNR biologists, they needed remote areas. They couldn't be bothered by people. I wonder if it's that the birds have just adapted or they've been forced into these marginal areas and they just have to make the best of it.
Yeah, that's a good question. What we can say is through observations, we know where they're at. They are thriving. And one of the benefits from the airplane is we can do the initial survey in mid-March, and that's going to tell us if those nests are occupied. We have a database in our GPSs where these nests are. And then we go back, that's called an occupation survey. Then later we go back for the second phase we call production survey. So we look to see if there's actually eaglets in the nest. And if there are, we can determine if it's a safe tree to climb, for instance, if it's not a dead tree. Then we pass this information along to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and their academic partners. And they actually have climbers that will go up into these nests with the eaglets. And they can take measurements, they can take feather blood samples and check, toxicology. They can band the eaglets, and this helps them to understand what the dispersion is when they identify, leg bands, down the road. So it's really an interesting program that's been long-lasting, and, it's good data.
Speaking of those climbers, do you ever meet or ever hear of or work with two guys, Jack Holt and Sergei Postopolsky?
Yes. I knew both of them.
I did as well. In fact, I went out with those guys and watched them climb. and Jack Holt was not a young man, and he was not a thin man, but he climbed like a monkey.
And they banded a lot of eagles and a lot of osprey.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So, at what height? How far above these eagles' nests are you flying?
That first survey, we can stay up quite high. The nice thing about the adult plumage on the eagles, they have the white head, white tail, so that's like a beacon. And these nests are large, as you've mentioned, Mike. You've seen them from the ground. They can be 6 feet across, quite deep. And you learn, you get an eye for what to look for from the aircraft. And we find that white pine is probably the most prominent nesting tree. Aspen also, and then when you get in the southern part of the state, cottonwood be good examples. There's some other various trees. But you don't have to get that low for the initial survey. For the second one, you do have to get a little lower just to make sure that you're identifying that they're eaglets. They don't have that white plumage, obviously. It takes several years for that to develop. But you can tell if there's eaglets in there and then pass that information along to the climbers. The last thing they want to do is expend energy climbing into a tree in a nest where there's nothing for them to band.
Kevin, I could not let you go without asking about the Orphaned Bear Cub Project. I mean, how are you involved in that from the air?
Yeah, it's one of those things that we're probably less involved now that we have GPS collars. That's becoming more prominent where they have several sow black bears radio collared. Before the GPS collars were available, then really it was all telemetry from the aircraft. And the idea there is to have certain sows, both in the upper peninsula and in the lower peninsula, radio collared, so that they'd be available as surrogate mothers to orphan cubs.
So how does it work?
That's a good question. If we have an instance where a cub is orphaned, apparently there's not much demand for those in zoos and these types of things. So the alternative would be to let nature take its course, and that's pretty hard to watch. So an alternate method that's been, I would say, perfected here, it's with great success. They'll have these surrogate sows on radio collar, then they can take an orphan cub to where that sow is. So you mentioned, what do we do from the airplane? We can use telemetry and find that sow and give a coordinate to the person on the ground. We can radio that information to the biologist, and that gets them close enough where they can then use like a hand wand with their telemetry. And typically the sow, recognizing that someone's getting close to her cubs, she will send her cubs up a tree, and then she'll usually stand off a ways, and then the biologists have to identify which tree those cubs are in. And once they find that tree, they can take their orphan, and they use like Vicks Vapor Rub, something that has a good strong scent to it, and they can apply that to the orphan cub, send it up the tree with the sow's cubs. And then they will usually lather that tree trunk up also with some of that Vicks Vapor Rub. And in the meantime, those cubs are mingling and sharing scent back and forth. And then the biologists will back out of there. And when those cubs come down, the sow doesn't count, obviously, but she recognizes these are cubs, and then she cleans them up. And that's a way of her putting her scent then on these orphan cubs. And like I said, the success rate of adoption is really, really good.
So she doesn't keep track of how many went up there. All she knows is when they come down, they all smell the same.
That's exactly right.
How long has that been going on? I've never heard of that before.
The biologist I work with in Roscommon, Mark Borson, he's been with the department for over 20 years. And so I know that he's been using that technique, and I believe in the Upper Peninsula they do the same.
So the orphan cubs, where are they coming from? Are you spotting those as you're flying, or those that, ones that people found in the roadway or the farm or whatever? Where do the orphans come from?
Yeah, that would be more likely scenario, Mike, is if a sow was hit by a car or something like that, and you have these cubs, one to, a few cubs there, where you know that the sow is deceased, and now what you have to do with these cubs.
You mentioned GPS collars and telemetry and such. Is there a technology out there, or a science or a scientific model out there somewhere that's going to make your aerial surveys obsolete? Or do you see this for a foreseeable future as the best way to count critters?
Yeah, I think for now, I don't see anything on the horizon that would displace, the human element. You certainly see the uncrewed aircraft discussions out there, but most of those are limited to line of sight. They're limited by battery life, so it's more of a local use. And when you're covering, a survey area for elk or moose that's going to be 4,000 miles, that's something where the UAS technology just isn't there yet.
Oh, yeah, okay, I get it. When you say uncrewed, I'm thinking drone, right?
Yes.
Okay,
drones.
Gotcha. Well, Kevin, I tell you what, it's been an interesting conversation. When Rick, my brother-in-law, told me about those orphan cubs, I said, we got to get Kevin on the show to talk about that, so I do certainly appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure, Mike.
All right, Kevin, we'll let you get on with your day. I know you're going to head off to a meeting. Kevin Jacobs of the DNR, Michigan.gov/DNR, by the way, is the website for the DNR. I could not wait to hear the story. I had heard bits and pieces, but now to hear it right from the source itself, pretty cool. Imagine that. Well, they talked about cubs and orphan cubs and such years ago, and telemetry and collared bears. Years ago, I went with a DNR crew to a bear den in the middle of the winter up by Cadillac. And this is when we didn't have a lot of bears downstate like we do now. So it was a real treat. It's the first bear I ever saw. Researchers would crawl into that den. Now, you got to be a certain type of person to crawl into the den of a sleeping bear, right? And they would drug the female, and they'd pull out the cubs. I got to hold one of those cubs to keep it warm in the jacket. It was so cool. We'll talk a little springtime fishing with Randy Claramunt after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX, and you can hear us north of the bridge. Let's go to Marquette, WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Killer Food Plots. Now, I realize you're probably not out putting in food plots right now, but it's not going to be that long. especially if Mother Nature continues on the way she is. But it's not too early to start thinking about putting in those food plots and making plans and such. You know, what went right for you last fall? What should you have done differently? Well, I recommend Michigan-based, family-owned Killer Food Plots. Company owner Rich Krazan is doing a great job. Check out his website, killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. They offer seed. They offer advice. They offer consultation. They'll come out and put it in the ground for you if you want. Very far-reaching, very thorough company, and Rich does a great job. Killerfoodplots.com, killerfoodplots.com. And I keep saying this, but I got to make myself a note. Reach out to Rich and get him on the show. Rich on show. Okay. All right, speaking of getting people on the show, this week's Ask Avery question coming up after the break here deals with keeping big spawn-filled female walleye in certain bodies of water this time of year. And I thought, well, I'm gonna reach out to that one, to a guy that I just happened to have fished with before, who just happens to be the head of the Fisheries division for the Michigan DNR, Randy Claramunt. And I thought, well, as long as I'm going to talk to Randy, let's bring him on a couple of segments and just broaden the scope of our conversation. And he has graciously agreed. Randy, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Mike. Appreciate you inviting me, and I would only be doing better if I was out fishing somewhere right now.
Oh, man, I am jonesing so bad. In fact, Monday I've got a trip scheduled. We're going to go out and do that skinny water that you and I were out in last summer. And we're going to jump up the Saginaw River and do some jigging as well.
Oh, fantastic.
It's an interesting time of year, isn't it, Randy? I mean, you look around it, we really didn't get much of a winter, at least downstate. And I know you're a hardcore angler, but put your biologist hat on and put your DNR manager's hat on. What's on your radar screen right now? What types of things are you working on? What do you want people to know about?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you mentioning just the challenges with the weather, because it is unprecedented. I mean, this year, for the first time ever, we had to cancel the Black Lake fishery.
Oh, yeah.
The ice fishery. Never had to do that before. So that's not a great first. And, we're looking to see how this, very mild winter / early spring will impact a lot of our fish and fisheries moving forward. So, we're tracking a lot of things and just trying to see where we have to adjust. But, some exciting stuff. We've got a few options for anglers now to catch and release grayling in Michigan, including Penagore Lake up at Houghton County, West Johns Lake in Luce County, and then Pine Lake in Manistee County, where we had some surplus fish from our restoration program where we're trying to, restate or reestablish grayling in Michigan, and having a great survival in the hatcheries as we brought 3-year classes from Alaska. Great partnership working on this, a lot of private donors, a lot of effort. So now for the first time in decades, you can have an opportunity to catch and release a grayling in Michigan, which hopefully we'll just build upon that in the future.
So our fish, these grayling that we got, these are Alaskan fish. They came from Alaska.
They did. That's correct.
So are they identical to what we had native here in Michigan?
No, but if you look at the genetics of grayling, there's not a lot of diversity, and so the founding brood stock is very similar to what's been successful in Montana. So we're kind of feeling like it's not really the genes that are going to influence this, but really the habitat. And so most people want to know, well, where are you going to put these fish when we actually get into the full-scale restoration for the streams? And we have 30 different streams in Michigan that are candidate streams, but we want to make sure the habitat is prime and will match what grayling need. That's the biggest challenge right now.
So no grayling have been put in rivers or streams yet? That's all lakes?
These are called trout lakes because they're basically groundwater fed, spring fed cold lakes. And, if we ever needed to go back and resample those or look at their growth, look at different characteristics, they're accessible, we could do that.
But they were really just surplus fish that were beyond what we need for production.
Real quick, Randy, I might have to cut you off. We can pick it up after the break. What else you working on?
Investment in Michigan Fisheries, and I'm super excited about this, and we can talk more in detail, but basically trying to address a long-term funding problem with the division and getting input from anglers on solutions, trying to link those with new opportunities and make sure that the funding goes to the activities that people care about on the ground. So investing in Michigan Fisheries, you'll hear more about it, but we're really looking forward to having the discussions with our anglers.
Randy, I appreciate that. Hang tight. We've got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. We're talking with DNR Fisheries Director Randy Claramunt. Coming up after the break, this week's Ask Avery question. You know what it is. I've referenced it a couple of times already, but listen, why not go right to the source? Why not go to the head guy, the head fish guy? And that's what we did, Randy Claramunt. More after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Then coming up in hour number 3, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about the DMI, the Deer Management Initiative. And I got a guy who says he can solve Michigan's deer hunting situation with 3 easy steps. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. And you can hear us, I think we can go north of the bridge one more time. Yeah, let's go to Escanaba, WCHT 600 AM 93.5 FM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by the folks at Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. You know this by now, but the way the Ask Avery segment works is this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. You can send me a question. The best way to do that, send me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. A question that you would like me to answer directly or a question you would like me to pass along to somebody else, maybe somebody at MUCC or DNR or whatever. This week's question comes from Jerry Seidel, and again, he sent me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. He said, Mike, I see pictures of people holding big walleye this time of year. I hope all those fish are being released, but I bet not. Jerry says, I think it's irresponsible to keep those big females. We should let them go to spawn so we have fish for the future. Am I wrong? I'd like to hear from a biologist on this, Jerry says. Well, listen, let's just not hear from any old biologist. Let's hear from the head of the Fisheries Division of the DNR, Randy Claramunt. Real quick, Randy, did you ever think as a kid growing up in Michigan you'd end up in this spot at the head of the Fish Division?
Not only growing up in Michigan, but growing up in the Thumb area and fishing Saginaw Bay and Saginaw River. No, I did not think I would land up here.
Well, it's been an interesting journey for you. I enjoyed fishing with you. I look forward to fishing with you again for walleye. What about this question from Jerry?
Jerry's got a great question, and I really appreciate you reaching out because what's really interesting about this question is that if you look at the number of spawning females in the population, most people want to think that the more females there are, the more recruits they'll produce, right? Kind of like a one-to-one relationship. And the truth of it is most fish populations, including walleye, tend to be a bell-shaped curve almost, if you will, where there's a certain level of females, number of females, where you'll reach the optimum or the highest level of recruitment. But when you get beyond that level, you'll start to see fewer younger fish being produced, that even though there's more females in the population. So then the answer to Jerry's question is really, what population are you talking about? And are you at that right side of the curve where if you took out females, you'd actually produce more recruits, which is kind of counterintuitive? Or are you on the left side of that curve, which means if you take out females, you'll end up with fewer recruits, and then it's a quick way to get to zero in a fish population, if you will. And so, if you think about that bell-shaped curve and where you're at, that's kind of our job as fisheries managers. And most populations are on the left side of the curve. You typically want more females in the population because if you take them out, you'll have fewer recruits, the population will go down. Very rarely do we see populations on the right side, and that's great if we do, but in that case, it actually helps the recruitment to pull out some of the older stock of females. And I would say the Detroit River, Western Lake Erie walleye population is probably along those lines, as is Saginaw Bay is, been bouncing actually back and forth between that optimal level of recruitment. The last thing I would conclude with this is just understand that these functions, these relationships out in the wild, they change every year. So you could have environmental conditions that completely change the recruitment potential, the ability of a fish to reproduce, in which case now it does, you could have been way in the right side and move all the way to the left. And so that's another part of our job, is to track those threats and to try to make sure we understand the relationship between the number of large females spawning in a population and their potential to reproduce.
So in general, the big water populations, you're safe to do so. I wouldn't want to keep these big, on an inland lake, this wouldn't be a good idea, I would think.
No, most inland lakes have, the closures exist because you're right. You're on the left side of that curve. If you harvest those females, it'll produce less recruits and the walleye population will go down. And so it's very rare that you see populations that have more females that actually cause decreases in reproduction.
Okay, real quick while I've got you, I'm starting to hear rumors now about Saginaw Bay going back to 5 fish of 15 inches. Any truth to that?
No, there's nothing that's being proposed right now. We look at all the data and we assess this fishery every year. So people might have heard that we're evaluating it, but there's nothing right now being proposed for changes. Everything right now looks generally on track, but we'll be presenting the upcoming Natural Resource Commission in April a detailed breakdown of the Saginaw Bay walleye population if anybody's interested.
Randy, always a pleasure. Appreciate your time. We'll talk again.
Thanks again, Mike. You take care and good luck in that skinny water. Can't wait to hear how you do.
You know I love that. Randy Claramunt, the fish head for the state of Michigan for the DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. And I say that with all respect, michigan.gov/DNR. And again, a thank you to the folks at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. Check them out online at securitycu.org. And thank you, Jerry Seidel, for sending me this week's question. He did that in an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I would love to hear from you as well. We will take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, change directions and talk with Richard P. Smith and wild game chef Dixie Dave Miner.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction. And welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. I am here every week for 3 hours talking about the great outdoors. People say, how do you fill 3 hours? Honestly, it's not hard. Think about it. When you start shooting the breeze with your buddies about hunting or fishing or shooting or trapping or whatever it is in this outdoor world that we are all so passionate about, if you looked at your watch, you could easily, fill that time, especially if that was your job like it is mine. It's a pretty good job to have. Honestly, I've been very, very blessed. the whole radio, the whole TV gig, the whole TV career. It was fun and it was nice and I enjoyed it. But I'm glad that's all behind me. I'm glad that I'm right where I am at today, concentrating on radio, doing some stuff online, doing some streaming and some social media. But radio is the main gig, and I'm very fortunate and happy and blessed to be able to do it. And I have no intention of calling it quits anytime soon. I always say my plans are not God's plans, but, I get that. And if you've been with me before, you know that I often talk about, all these great experiences and hunts and fishing adventures and stuff that I've gone on over the years have been very, very, very cool. But it always comes back to people, the people that I've met, the people that I've had a chance to get to know, and the people that I have learned from. When I think of people that I have learned from in this business and in the hunting world, Richard P. Smith always comes to mind. I've learned more about bear hunting in particular from Richard than anybody. I've seen Richard interact with bears in a way that scared the heck out of me at the time because I'd never been around bears before. And I've since learned so much about bear hunting from him. I know he is so knowledgeable. He's also an expert, in my opinion, when it comes to deer hunting, deer management, and deer in general. So it just seemed like an interesting time of year with the deer management initiative discussion. We're getting to be to the end of winter here in the UP soon. Seemed like a good time to get back in touch with Richard and see what's on his mind, and he has agreed to spend some time with us. Richard, welcome back. How are you?
I'm great, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing just great. I got a bad case of spring fever. Down here, I can get away with it. What about up there in your world? Is it feel like wintertime still, or you feel like you're moving into the next season?
Hey, we've had a non-winter this winter, Mike. Basically, it's amazing. We've not had more than a foot of snow on the ground in Marquette all winter, and that's extremely rare. It's been great for the deer. They've been able to move around freely, find food, and we're going to have an excellent carryover of deer into this fall from last year, and we're going to have excellent fawn production because of this mild winter.
So even if we got some bad late winter storms, you think we're okay? You think we're in pretty good shape?
We're in excellent shape. The deer have not used their fat reserves like they normally do during a normal winter. Fighting deep snow, cold temperatures. We maybe had 1 or 2 days that got below zero here, but very few. And we just haven't had the snow that's been enough to impact deer movements. Very few deer are in yards, in fact.
So, not having deer herded up in the yards is good, right? Because if we can save those deer yards and not get them browsed so heavily, I mean, if we can increase the lifespan of those yards, that's a good thing, right?
It is a good thing, but our winter deer complexes are in such terrible shape right now, even though they're going to get a break this winter from lack of use. It's very difficult for them to reach a point where they're going to carry more deer than they have been. That's part of the reason we have so few deer in parts of the UP is our winter habitat is shot. And that's from trying to carry too many deer. When we've had severe winters, our harvest restrictions are so severe that we can't harvest does with bow and arrow over most of the UP, and both combination deer buck tags are restricted, reduces the deer harvest. We've had, it's carried too many deer through some severe winters, and they've destroyed the winter habitat before they died.
Richard, did you apply to be on a part of the Michigan Deer Management Initiative?
I did. I was willing and hoping I would have the opportunity to provide input on that group, but I was not selected.
Well, I wasn't either. I didn't expect that I would be. In fact, I didn't think I would be a good member, but I thought, listen, if they're going to give me the opportunity, I am going to apply. In your case, Richard, I think you would have been a very good choice. So you didn't get chosen, but there was an opportunity to send your thoughts to that group, and you did that, right?
Yes, I did. I took advantage of that opportunity, even though there was only a 4-day time span before the deadline. Once I was notified of that opportunity to do so, I thought it was very important to provide the input I could and took the time to do so to get it in by the deadline.
I read your thoughts, and if I remember right, didn't it come down to 3 basic premises?
Yes, things that can be done very quickly to improve deer management in Michigan.
What are they?
Lift the ban on baiting in the Lower Peninsula because it isn't limiting or restricting the spread of disease in the Lower Peninsula. In fact, it's increasing the spread of diseases in the Lower Peninsula by reducing deer harvest by hunters. And the second thing is eliminate mandatory antler point restrictions in the Lower Peninsula and the UP because they aren't working. They're not necessary. We have reduced deer numbers now over what we've had, and the DNR keeps claiming we're losing hunters, yet they're setting regulations that makes it harder for the hunters that remain to harvest deer. Mandatory antler point restrictions is one of those. It reduces deer harvest, and it also increases the spread of disease by protecting older age class bucks, or not protecting older age class bucks. It protects the majority of yearling bucks, and a significant number of yearling bucks have chronic wasting disease in Michigan. It's been confirmed in Montcalm County. A significant number of yearling bucks have had the disease. By protecting diseased deer, it increases the spread of the disease. And the third thing is to increase the black bear harvest in the Upper Peninsula to reduce predation on fawns. Black bears are important predators on fawns. By increasing the bear harvest, it'll increase fawn recruitment in the deer herd, which is important to bring up the numbers.
Richard, these 3 things that you bring up, I feel like they're directly opposed to the DNR's position on these things.
Well, part of it is lack of knowledge of the social interaction that white-tailed deer normally have. Now, I've walked with whitetails of both sexes in many age classes for over 30 years, and I've seen firsthand the social interaction of whitetails on a daily basis without the presence of bait. Very few, if any, DNR people or Natural Resources Commission members who make these decisions have seen the interaction, social interaction from deer on a daily basis that I've seen. If they've seen what I've seen, they would understand the fact that a ban on baiting is not reducing the spread of disease.
Well, and you're a step ahead of me because I was going to come back and say, play devil's advocate and say, Richard P. Smith, you're not a wildlife biologist. Why are you even qualified to make the statements that you do? But I think you just answered that.
And I put together a video that's on YouTube that shows a sample of what I've seen of the interaction between whitetails on a regular basis that is responsible for the spread of disease, not baiting.
Oh, you bring up a lot of things that I want to follow up on, but we're coming up on a break. So I suspect you can stick around with me a few more minutes, Richard?
Sure.
All right, I appreciate that. We're talking with Richard P. Smith. His website is, appropriately enough, richardpsmith.com. That's richardpsmith.com. Richard is a noted outdoor writer. I consider him to be certainly an expert in the world of bear, also deer hunting. He's very outspoken, which I appreciate. I like that. And he's very passionate. I appreciate that, and I like that as well. RichardPSmith.com is the website. We'll take a break. When we come back, I want to follow up on, Richard said bears are predators of whitetail. Well, geez, I thought it was only wolves, right? And also, speaking of wolves, there's an interesting story about a wolf-human interaction that if we have time, we'll follow up on that as we talk with Richard P. Smith, RichardPSmith.com. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC 1450 AM, 99.7 FM as well. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Why buy a bunch of different expensive sets of hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality set and snap on and zip on an outer shell with a different camo pattern in just a couple of minutes at the most? It just makes sense, right? Michigan-based, family-owned VersaSkins, the website versaskins.com, versaskins.com. And if you're looking for big sizes, I mean 4, 5, 6X, you know how hard it is to get hunting clothes in that size. VersaSkins can help you out. And also for the saddle hunters, if you're buying into that latest craze, VersaSkins makes jackets specifically for saddle hunters as well. Again, the website versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. While you are online, I would ask you to check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and then head over to RichardPSmith.com, which obviously is the website of Richard P. Smith. Richard, following up on the DMI, the Deer Management Initiative. I'm looking for a list of who is on that group. By the way, there were 2,500 people. Let me pull up a quick text message here. There were 2,500 people who applied. Let me put my glasses on. There are 22 people who will represent the UP, 24 who will represent the lower, and roughly half of those individuals, this is from the DNR, were invited from specific groups like MUCC and such. So I asked for a list of names, and I was actually told that I would have to file a Freedom of Information Act request to get the names.
Yeah. I made a similar request for information from the DNR on bear to get some information from a wildlife biologist in the Lower Peninsula. He told me I had to file a Freedom of Information Act request, which I did, and I got a response that it would cost me more than $800 to get the public information that has been gathered with public funds paid to public employees. It just blew me away.
I would like to know who's on the DMI, but I don't want to know bad enough to spend $800 to find out.
Yeah, me neither. It's ridiculous. And we're paying these people. We're paying this agency through our license dollars, and they're making us pay to get the information they're gathering with our money.
Well,
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I was told in this case that, you know, some of the people who are on this group are not used to being in the public eye, and the department wanted to protect their privacy. And listen, I respect that, but if you volunteer to be on a group like this, I think you got to expect that you're going to be in the public eye in some regard.
Exactly. It is supposed to be a public group working for the public.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. I'm very curious. It looks like they have a very aggressive timetable as far as getting to work. So I'm going to be very curious what they come up with.
Well, me too. And that's one of the reasons I took advantage of the opportunity to provide the input that I did for both groups, both the Lower and the Upper Peninsula. The topics I mentioned covers boboth peninsulas.
Well, I got to go back to bear predation on whitetails. All I hear about these days is wolf predation. I guess I didn't I knew that bears would eat fawns, but again, I just keep thinking the wolves are the problem.
Well, that's what most deer hunters think and feel, but the bottom line is wolves are currently listed as an endangered species in Michigan. Whether we like it or not, there's nothing legal that we can do about wolves, period. Bottom line. We do have a bear hunting season. We do have license quotas, and there is an opportunity to increase license quotas and have an impact on increasing fawn survival where we can do something legally.
You talk about wolves being protected. Yeah, they're very much off limits, but there have been situations just recently. I think it was a retired game warden in Wisconsin shot one, and there was actually a case in Michigan a few years back where somebody shot a wolf in self-defense, right?
Well, a former game warden, I believe it was in Wisconsin, shot a wolf in claimed self-defense. Brian Krupla, however you pronounce his last name, from Newberry, killed a wolf in self-defense on August 2nd, 2019. He had a wolf come in his yard and grab one of his dogs. And he had a loaded shotgun that he grabbed, and he ran after the wolf to try and save his dog. He fired a warning shot toward the wolf to try and get him to drop the dog, and it did. But then the wolf charged the guy. And it was only 8 or 10 feet away, something like that, when he shot it. So it was a matter of self-defense.
Did he get in trouble?
No, he reported the situation. He had his father call the DNR and report what happened. Well, he took his dog to the vet, and 2 conservation officers responded to investigate. And he dropped his shotgun where he shot the wolf and picked up his dog to try and help it. And it was clear that the wolf was only a matter of feet away when he shot the wolf. And there was he was given a verbal warning for having shot the wolf, even though he was protecting himself. There was no charges.
Actually, I think that was a pretty gutsy move on his part to self-report because, this is such a high-profile situation and they're so off-limits in a lot of ways. I give the guy credit for doing that.
Right, but he knew he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't have a whole lot of choice if he didn't want to get bit.
Well, I exactly, but I'm saying the self-reporting because there have been cases where people have done nothing wrong and still got in trouble for it because of the way things are written. So I
understand.
And this is the fact that he actually had to shoot is an isolated situation. But I've been talking to people the last couple of years all across the UP have had situations where dogs have come into the yard or they've been out hunting, running hounds or whatever. Let me ask you, Richard, you live up there. I don't. How real is this problem, or is it something that's being overblown to get attention for some reason? Help me figure it out.
Well, I've interviewed 3 or 4 or 5 hunters in the UP who've been treed by wolves, who felt threatened enough that they didn't have weapons with them, that they had to climb trees to avoid being attacked. And these are all veteran hunters and outdoorsmen who I've interviewed. Now, it's still not common for this to happen, but it does occasionally happen. And it is a concern when you're in wolf country.
What is the biggest concern facing hunters in the UP these days, in your opinion? Biggest threat, biggest challenge?
Lack of knowledge about deer management. There's so many people that think shooting wolves, managing wolves, would solve our deer management problems, deer number problems in the UP. And that's not true. It's not that simple. There are other predators like black bears out there that take a significant number of deer every year. We have over 10,000 bears that are at least a year old in the UP. Every one of those bears kills multiple fawns every year. Added up, it comes to 30 to 50,000 fawns every year killed by black bears. Anybody who thinks that reducing bear predation isn't going to help isn't paying attention. We already have a year-round coyote season.
For now.
For now, unless the Natural Resources Commission changes it. But black bears are underhunted, underharvested in Michigan. That's something that we can, if we focus on that, put enough attention to it, put enough support behind it, we can increase the bear harvest, provide more recreational opportunity, more dollars for the DNR, and better manage both bear and deer in the UP. If people would get on board with that, we could maybe move forward.
People like wildlife biologists or bear hunting groups or what?
Both. The DNR has consistently recommended low license quotas for the UP. In fact, they've declined consistently since 2012. There was only 5,400 and some bear licenses available, 5,406 in the UP last year, and it'll be the same this year. But only 4,237 hunters actually hunted. And that's been the case. In the early 2000s through 2011, we were issuing 11,000 to 12,900 bear licenses in the UP. And we can do the same again now without negatively impacting the bear population, but improve deer survival, fawn survival, improve the deer population.
Who are these hunters getting tags and not using them? I hope it's not the... Well, I want to hear your answer, Richard.
Well, some hunters apply for a permit. You've got to do it in May or June, between May 1st and June 1st. Sometimes hunters think they're going to be able to hunt and something comes up and they are not able to hunt.
Gotcha.
Because of health issues, family problems, any number of things come up. There could be some people who don't support bear hunting.
That's what I wondered. That's the one I was worried about. Yeah,
there could be some of those, but the DNR can take that into account. We're still issuing far too few bear licenses. Wisconsin, our neighboring state of Wisconsin, has been issuing between 11,500 and 12,970 bear tags since 2016, harvesting an average of 4,000 bears a year. And they're not hurting their bear population. We could do the same. I'm not advocating we harvest 4,000 bears, but we could harvest 2,000 to 3,000 every year without hurting the bear population and increasing whitetail survival.
Richard, it is always a pleasure to talk with you. Always very insightful. I appreciate your wisdom on things, and I would encourage people to check out your website, richardpsmith.com, richardpsmith.com, and I'm sure that you and I will be talking again soon.
Great. Well, nice talking to you, Mike.
Same here. Richard P. Smith, richardpsmith.com. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the show. Let's see, what have I got left? WIOS in Tawas, 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. You can hear us twice each weekend on WIOS. You can also hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And you can hear us in Saginaw on WSGW AM and FM, 790 AM, 100.5 FM. In fact, you can hear us twice on WSGW each weekend as well. I am in the studios of WSGW right now, here with Jonathan Dent. John doing a great job. I appreciate that very much. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let them create an outdoor getaway in your backyard. And you know what? It's time to start thinking that direction. The folks from Reader can do a wonderful job. They can do so much as far as patios, even pools, landscaping, backyard kitchens, you name it. But they're going to start getting busy here real soon. So if you want to get on that schedule, get in touch with the folks at Reader right now. The website is readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. Talk to their designers, talk to their people, come up with a plan, get on the schedule, and you will be good to go for the spring. But in the meantime, I saw the Reader guys out plowing snow the other day, and they're still going to come back to my house here before things green up and do some late winter dormant pruning on my trees. So I'm telling you, they got their hands in a lot of different things, and they do a great job. I want to follow up on that conversation with Richard P. Smith. I find him to be extraordinarily interesting, very knowledgeable, and outspoken. And I love that. I realize, though, that Richard is one of those people who, like me in some ways, and I don't pretend to be the level of expertise or knowledge that Richard had. Believe me, that's not what I'm saying. But when you put yourself out there and you talk to people and you have an audience of whatever size, that can attract criticism. And Richard gets his share of criticism because he is very, again, outspoken, and he's confident in what he believes. Well, when you do that, you put a target on your back. I've always said that. The more successful you become, the bigger the target on your back becomes as well. So, it is what it is. It's part of life, I guess. Want to go back to bears and bear dens. I started to tell the story about going into that. I didn't go into the bear den there in Cadillac, but I watched biologists do this, and this has been quite a while now. And you heard our guest in the second hour, Kevin Jacobs, talk about telemetry. Having collared bears. So we went out with this DNR crew, and they followed the collared bear to the den. And then there was a biologist who got down on his stomach, and he looked into that den with a flashlight. And there's a sleeping bear in that den, right? He went in there with a flashlight. Think about this. How confident do you have to be to crawl into a bear den and poke that thing with a tranquilizer? So he did that, backed out, let the bear go to sleep. They then crawled back in, grabbed the bear, the sow, pulled her out of the den along with her cubs. And those cubs were the cutest little thing. And their little cry was almost like a human baby. And they were so cute and so cuddly and so little. To be able to hold one of those things and keep it warm was so very cool. Very cool. On a similar note, we were talking about eagles and the Eagle Survey and the guys named Jack Holt and Sergei Postopolsky. These were the guys that the feds hired to climb up trees to go up into the eagle's nest. Sergei wouldn't do it. Jack did it. He would climb up the trees and ban these eaglets. And the way they did that was Jack would climb up, he'd get the eaglets, and he'd put them in a leather bag, and he'd drop them back down to the forest floor with a rope. He didn't ban them while they were up in the net. So Jack would stay up there, he'd drop the bucket down to Sergei. Sergei would ban the eaglets, and Jack would pull it back up and put the eaglets in the nest. Two observations there. When you climb into an eagle nest, the adults get a little bit mad. In fact, Jack used to wear a helmet because the birds would get a little bit mad. The other thing is, I went out with them several times, and on more than one occasion, I got to hold the eaglet while they put the band on it. That is so cool. It is experiences like that I've had over the years that make me realize just how blessed I am. Some of the cool things I've had a chance to do and still be around now to be able to talk about it. And I don't know. Pretty cool. My name is Mike Avery. My website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. If you want to reach out to me, I would love to hear from you. Let me know what's on your mind. Let me know what you think. I especially want to see your pictures and your videos. Share them with me. I'm assuming if you send me an email that, you're giving me permission to share those on my Facebook page, right? If that's not the case, please let me know, and of course I will respect your privacy. I want to see your pictures. I want to see your video, hear your stories. I'll post them on the Facebook page and more. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we're going to wrap up this week's show with a surprise guest. His name is Wild Game Chef Dixie Dave Miner. Well, that's not really a surprise, is it? Dixie Dave coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. So glad to have you along with us, and so glad to be able to check in each week with Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner. You know Dave. Dave was on the TV show for many, many years. We used to wrap up the TV show with Dave, and it just seemed appropriate to continue on with the tradition of wrapping up the radio show with Dixie Dave. And he is so gracious with his time, and he's such a nice guy. And you know, there are very few things that can stop Dave Miner from being on this radio show, including a heart attack. There was a time when he was sitting in the ER parking lot suffering from a heart attack, and he did the show, and I didn't even know it till after the fact. So, David, I'm hoping that as we talk this week, everything's okay.
Yep, everything is fine and dandy with me. How about yourself, Michael?
I'm doing good. But I tell you, Dave, you have been more dedicated to this show than I think maybe even I have been over the years, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, geez, it's been a pleasure working with you, Mike, all of these years, whether the TV show or the radio show. I've enjoyed it immensely.
I have as well, and as we are recording this show, by the time we get to the end, it's just about lunchtime. So every week I'm starting to get hungry when you come on, and I'm exceptionally hungry this week, so I'm hoping you have an exceptionally good dish.
I do. I have a squirrel recipe, seeing how squirrel season is like.
Yeah.
By the time people hear this. So it's a squirrel chasseur. It's kind of a French name for just the simmered squirrel. So you need 2 to 3 squirrels, you know. They might average out to, say, 3 to 5 pounds for the by the time you cut them up by 8 and trim any of the shot off if you're using a shotgun. A medium onion, diced kind of large. Same thing with a couple, 3 stalks of celery, kind of diced large. 12-ounce package of mushrooms sliced thin. I use tarragon in this dish, or you could use basil. If you don't have tarragon, basil would be a great substitute. A small can of whole tomatoes chopped and de-seeded. 1 to 2 jars of chicken gravy, depending on how big of a batch you're going to make of this. A couple ounces of white wine, a couple of tablespoons of chopped parsley, coarse. I like black velvet in this dish. It's a little sweet. It's an optional, but if you go to a grocery store or a liquor store, you can buy airline bottles of black velvet, which is 1 ounce portions in them little teeny bottles, airline bottles they call them. A couple cloves of garlic diced fine, salt and pepper to taste, flour to dredge, and olive oil to saute. So you're going to dredge the meat in flour, and in a real nice hot pan, you're going to brown the meat on all sides. You don't want to crowd it too much. You want to get a nice batch and get the flour all set so that it's going to help thicken this also, too. When browned, remove it to a casserole. In the same pan, what you're going to do is you're going to saute the onions, the celery, and the garlic just for a little while, just to kind of break that flavor loose. Stir it most all the time, and then take it away from the stove, flambe with the black velvet if you're going to use the black velvet. When the flames die down, then you can add it back to the range, and then add the white wine and the spice. Bring to a boil. Add if you're going to use stock, you could, but it's a lot easier to use just jarred gravy. If you're going to use the stock, look on page 2 in the cookbook for a recipe for roux, R-O-U-X. Add the chopped tomatoes and pour this over the meat in the casserole that you got. And bake at 350 degrees uncovered, and you can start checking after an hour, but it's probably going to take a good hour and a half because sometimes squirrels can be a little tough. And then you can check it for a half hour after that, after you check it the first time, and that'll give you a better idea when the meat's falling off the bone.
And what page is this in the cookbook?
166.
166. So I will post this recipe on page 166 on the Mike Avery Outdoors Facebook page this weekend, and people will be able to see that, and that's going very well, Dave. So I appreciate you letting me do that.
Okay, good. How's the ticket sales going for your dinner?
They are going outstanding, and I was just going to say I look forward to seeing you there next weekend, Saturday, March 2nd, you and Terry at our Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction. It's going to be a lot of fun, Dave.
Okay, I think so, too. I'll be looking forward to it.
All right, we will see you then. In the meantime, you have a great week, buddy.
You too, Michael. Thank you.
Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner, he referenced our Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction. I think it's our 7th annual event this year, Saturday, March 2nd at the Great Hall in Midland. For tickets, one.bidpal.net, and one is O-N-E, one.bidpal.net. To get your tickets. There will also be this weekend, as you're hearing the show, go to my Mike Avery Outdoors Facebook page. I will post a QR code on that page. You can just scan that, go directly there. We have an online silent auction. You can be a part of that even if you don't show up. But if you do join us, and I hope you do, wonderful event, great food, great fellowship. I think a great live auction as well, including hunting trips, including fishing trips. All kinds of Michigan brand meat products free for a year. Well, they're not free. You got to bid on it, right? But the high bidder gets them for a year. One.bidpal.net. Join us Saturday, March 2nd. Doors open at 4:30. Dinner at 6. Live auction 7-ish, 7:30-ish whenever we wrap up dinner. We will keep the evening moving along. We will not waste your time. You will have fun. I can just about guarantee that. One.bidpal.net/Trinity Monitor. All right, my friends, my name is Mike Avery. The website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to talking with you next week right here on Outdoor Magazine.